In this video, I'm going to show you how to screw wood together. Welcome back to more David's DIY. On this channel we do a lot of everyday DIY stuff around the house, everyday kind of answers for DIY problems. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for a lot more really great content. And remember, in the description below is all the instructions and anything that I may have mentioned that's important in this video. So let's get into it. So one of the first things you're going to want to think about is the length of screw you're going to be using to screw two pieces of wood together. You want to make sure that the screw isn't going to stick past the end of the second piece of wood you're screwing to, or whatever it is you're screwing into. So like this screw here would be a little bit too long. You probably want to go with, something that almost goes through your second piece but not quite, and that's going to give a lot of good bite to hold them together. The next thing to think about is the screw itself. If you're, screwing like a thicker piece of wood like this into another piece, you're going to want a screw that has a decent sized collar on the top, or the shank. That's the part that doesn't have any threads on it, so that when you screw into the second piece, it allows to bite into the second piece, but it's not just spinning the threads in the first. If you have threads all the way top, sometimes what that causes is the pieces to spread apart. You might have run into this in the past. As you screw in, it will separate the pieces. Having a collar on the top like this that's blank, that'll allow it to tighten right up tight. And if you've run into the situation where when you screw two pieces together and they separate, another way to prevent that is to drill a pilot hole in the first piece. And to do that, you just get a drill bit where the drill bit size is the same as the shank of the screw. So the diameter of the drill is the same as the smooth part of the drill. And then you drill into the first piece, and I'll show you how to do that now. So all we would do is just drill a pilot hole through the first piece like this. Line it up with your second piece and then drill through into it, and that's going to help keep it nice and tight. So you could just kind of quickly deburr your first piece that you screwed. Grab your bit, and you'll notice now when you screw it together that it goes together nice and snug. So you start to separate, but then it tightens right up. And that brings me to my next point. As I screwed this in, it didn't split the end, but it just barely started to split right there. And I'll show you a really handy trick to prevent that from happening. If you're going to be screwing right near the end of a piece of wood, or like a hardwood like this is maple, and you're worried about it splitting, what you can do is drill a hole, not the size of the shank, but you could drill a through hole that's the entire size of the threads, or even slightly bigger than the threads of the screw. That way, the screw will go clear through the first piece and just tighten up on the second one. So once again, we would just go ahead and drill the first piece, kind of offset it a little bit so you don't drill into your second one. And you could drill all the way through, and this is maple, so it's a little tougher to drill. Drill a clear hole all the way through. And then your screw isn't going to crack the end of this at all. And what you may have saw just brings me to my next point. You may have noticed that as I was drilling that screw in, the bit slipped a little. You'll definitely be worth getting yourself a really good bit. And if you're ever drilling into something and the screw head starts to strip, you definitely want to remove that screw right away and use a new one, because what will end up happening sometimes is the head of that screw will strip, and just as you almost get it all the way in, it'll strip to the point where you can't turn it anymore, and then you'll be stuck with a screw stuck in your wood. If you're in Canada, you're going to see a lot of Robertson screws like this, a lot of Robertson head screws. This is a bigger black Robertson. These are the red Robertsons. In the States, you're going to see a lot of Phillips and Torx and even flathead sometimes. Other places in the world, you're going to see a lot of Robertson, a lot of Torx. Definitely, you don't really want to go with Phillips. They're going to tend to strip out a lot. Another handy trick, if you wanted to screw, let's say, this 2x4 onto that 2x4, you don't really have any way to go about it. You'd want to kind of put the screws in on an angle like this, and the easy way to do that is you can just take your drill bit and your drill And you can screw, or I should say drill, you just start drilling in a little bit like this, pull your drill bit out, and then you can kind of go on an angle like this, drill through, and that's going to allow your screw, when you screw it in, to go right into the piece of wood. I'll show you what I mean. So once you've got that hole drilled, deburr it a little bit, grab your screw, get it started in here, and then as you can see, that's going to allow this screw to go right into that 2x4 like that. You could do two of them side by side, and that makes a really strong joint. Once again, for a finished piece, you could countersink this hole, and then it would be really flush and it would look just perfect. And if you wanted, you could pre-drill, every hole, and it's always going to work perfect. For just 2x4s or something like this, don't be afraid just to go ahead and drive your screws right in right off the bat. Just make sure you're pressing down really hard. Kind of go slow to start, even slow the whole way, and that's going to ensure that the screw goes in really well and really tight. If you happen to be screwing something together like this, just pay attention to when you screw in that you're not to one side or the other, because that's going to cause this to split out. You're definitely going to want to make sure that your screw is right centered in the middle, so that way when you screw it in, it doesn't split this out either way. So you just would line it up nice and good like that and screw it in. Just like that. And if any situation you find that when you put a screw in, it tightens up and then it starts to get loose, that means it's stripped out in the bottom piece. You're going to want to remove that and move your screw over and get a fresh bite in a different spot. Otherwise your pieces aren't going to stay together. And for a really, really tight, solid, permanent connection, definitely think about gluing and screwing together, and that's going to be, kind of the ultimate joint that you're ever going to have. So remember, in the description below is all the instructions to everything we've done in this video, as well as links to all the tools I've used in this video. So if you like what you saw today and you learned a little bit, consider subscribing. See you in the next one.